Welcome to the Bonus XP podcast, a podcast all about video games, where each fortnight, three friends gather around the internet campfire to discuss a news item or a game and topic that we can bring forth and get everyone's thoughts on it. I'm your host, Luke Morgan. Joining me, as always, is Conan.
Bonjour.
And Griner.
Ahoy, hoy.
So, before we get into it, mixing it up a bit to make things a bit more interesting. I think this was Griner's recommendation and I like it. So each fortnight now, we will bring forward either a news topic from that fortnight or just a random gaming topic that we think is fun and that we want the guys' opinion on. And we'll bring forward one each fortnight, and that will be the topic of our video. Before we get into it, Lo, you guys play anything at the moment? Conan?
Yeah, I've been playing through here in Sydney. We're still in lockdown. It's actually the worst lockdown we've had since this whole pandemic began. So I've taken the opportunity to play a game all about viruses. I'm playing Plague Tale Innocence.
Ooh.
Do you guys ever play it?
No, I've seen it. It looks cool.
I'm very keen to play it. I've got it. Like it's sitting on my PS5. They've just released the PS5 upgrade, like with 60 frames a second or whatever.
Yeah, I saw that.
And I'm really, really keen to play it. I'm just waiting for a chance for me and Alicia to sit down and play through it because she hates rats. So I think it'd be a great game.
Way to get over that fear. Yeah, it's fun. It's an interesting game. It's like, I didn't realize this, but I think it's actually made by a little indie studio. And so in terms of that, it's really remarkable to see what an indie studio can do, like making a title that looks like a AAA. I won't go into depth until you play it, Luke, because I've got a lot of thoughts about it, but I don't want to spoil anything. But it's definitely worth a play. It's just got a really cool feel to it. And again, being in lockdown from a pandemic sweeping the world, I'm feeling a lot of relation to these people who are getting eaten.
And I mean, like, not just the COVID virus, but New South Wales was hit by a mouse plague for the last few months. It's kind of telling, actually. But
life imitates art.
How much have you put into it so far?
I don't know, probably 10, 15 hours. I've been playing a fair bit of it. I got it on Game Pass, and I think I'm nearing the end. I think the game's about 15, 20 hours long.
Yeah.
So I can definitely feel that I'm in the final sort of act. So I'd say about probably 10, 15 hours, depending.
And this is just my curiosity. Like, what would you say is like the worst part of it? I think when I first looked up reviews when it first came out, I was really keen to get it. The price always threw me off. It was free on PS Plus just this last month, so I got it. Was able to download it. I feel like every time I watched it, I was sort of like, the gameplay looks a bit indie. Like it doesn't look like it's, a AAA sort of gameplay. Is that fair?
Yeah. So yeah, the price point is a big thing. I've been keeping my eye out for it to go on sale, for $15. And when I got Game Pass, it was on there, so I took the opportunity. It definitely, the gameplay is the biggest criticism. Like I was combing through the Reddit the other day, and everybody was very sort of critical about that. Like this, people going as far as being like, this barely even registers as a game, which I don't think is fair. But it kind of runs that space between a walking simulator and a sort of Last of Us-esque third-person exploration game.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things. If you are wanting like a ultra interactive like video game experience, you're not going to get it. It's quite cinematic. It's a survival game, so it's kind of like one hit and you're out almost all the time.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So it's very much like you've got to figure it out. And so it definitely has that indie feel in that sense. It's more about the world around it and sort of some cool gimmicks and ideas rather than the gameplay itself. So yeah, like I wouldn't have picked it up. If I picked it up for $100, I wouldn't have been happy. But
what is the gameplay? Like what do you actually do?
So it's a lot of it is like puzzle solving, and it's pretty basic puzzle solving. Sort of like it's like very stealth based. So a lot of it is like moving through areas, avoiding people. Basically, the whole premise is this rat plague's there, and I don't know if you guys ever played Gears of War, but they're like the krill in that. It's basically if you walk into shadow, the rats just eat you. So you've got to sort of do a lot of maneuvering lights around, starting fires to sort of go from one end to the other. Starting one fire, moving a light. Sometimes you put out one fire to move them away from another area. Sort of stuff like that. So it's very survival based, very gimmicky in that sense. And then there is combat, but it's kind of like, it appears you just got to kill one or two people if you can, and that's it. There's no like long battles or anything.
And
Sneaking up behind dudes and shivving them or anything like that.
No, like you can take people out that way, but it's generally pretty risky and expensive too. So it's kind of like, it's just
people get through.
Basically, yeah, or try to use the environment as best you can.
when do you get the shotgun?
Act 3, I'm about to get it. It's
Okay.
great.
Oh, it's going to change the way it goes.
It's like Evil Dead 3.
Yeah. Wait, play Plague Tale 2 with a shotgun.
A sequel is coming, which I'm kind of keen about.
Yeah, and it looks really impressive, like graphically and stuff.
Mm.
Just one last question on it. Is it based like on the actual like plague? Like, is it based in history, or is it a bit sort of?
I'm glad you asked the question. So here's why this game is my jam a lot. I love magic realism. I think it's a fascinating genre. I'm all about that, and it's fitted into that where it's very much based in history. So it's set during the 13th century. It's all about the Black Death. They call it the Bite, but it is the Black Death. But the rats are like highly stylized in terms of they're just these swarms of infinite things, and they eat people within a few seconds. And so I was reading an interview with the creator. He said he very much, I can't remember if it was a he, but whoever it was said it was very much they wanted to make like a visual and physical embodiment of the horror of the plague. So rather than having this sort of unknown thing just killing people, they wanted to create the idea of that unstoppable swarm just sweeping through cities and countries. They wanted to personify that, and they did that with this rat swarm. So it's a really cool visual storytelling technique. And I think it's really fun. Like the whole story is based in sort of history, but also fantasy.
Yeah.
But it's like that low fantasy where no one's throwing fireballs or anything. And it's like, it's all about alchemy. And so it's kind of like this just goes over the edge of what alchemy was into. And so it's a bit more like magic.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they're all like scientists figuring it out. It's really interesting.
Sounds awesome. I'm definitely going to play it like in the next couple of weeks or so. So as soon as I get a chance. Griner, what are you playing?
My name is Griner, and I have an addiction to MOBAs. It started with Dota, the Warcraft 3 mod. I graduated onto League of Legends for a while, and then Dota 2 came out, and I have put several thousand hours into that game. And now I'm playing Pokemon Unite, which is a game that I saw announced. I never thought I'd be interested in it. It looked like a phone game, but it's a MOBA based in the Pokemon universe, and it's better than it has any right to be. It's a lot of fun. I can play it on the couch. Games are capped at 10 minutes, which I think is like the biggest thing about this game. Like there's no long drawn out games. Everything is over after 10 minutes, no matter what. Yeah, and it's just been, I've put a lot of hours into it over the last couple of days. It has a very scummy monetization though, which is, like it has more coins and tokens than the John Wick universe, and it's just, it's grating on me already, but I'll stick with it for a little while longer, I think. Have you spent much money on it? Not much. I think
that's by
the time I used my Nintendo tokens, which I didn't even realize I had, I think I spent $5 or something to get the battle pass. And so it's so it is a mobile game. No, it's on Switch. It's a mobile. It's on the Switch. Oh, okay, cool. So that's I hadn't even heard of this. So is it like a full price game, or is it a free to play game? It's free to play. Yeah, but it has all the free to play trappings, right? Like it's got a battle pass, it's got a dozen different currencies. Only one of them you can pay real money for. Probably the scummiest thing though is like there's coins, which are basically your most basic currency. You use them for a lot of things in the game. You use them to unlock new Pokemon. You use them to buy upgrades. You use them for a lot of different things. There's a cap on the amount you can earn every day, and it's quite a low. It's a kind of a low cap. Like I've reached the cap every day I've played, except for today because I didn't really play today. But like it takes away even though I enjoy the gameplay on its own, you still want to get that progression. Yeah. And so after you reach that cap, the only thing you're doing is leveling up your trainer. Like the quests don't take long to complete. So I don't know. As far as MOBAs go, it's way better than it deserves to be. Like it's a lot of fun. And Pokemon seems like a really good fit for the MOBA genre. Like it's, you've already got characters that level up and evolve at different stages and have these signature moves. And so you get to play around, be a Pokemon.
So is it like League of Legends and Dota? Like how exactly does it play?
Yeah, like it's like League of Legends and Dota have this 3-lane thing where creeps push up the lanes and you push the lanes and destroy towers. In this, there's only 2 lanes, but there's still 5 characters, 5 players per team, and you push the lanes. Basically, the goal is to kill creeps along the way. They drop orbs, and then you bank those orbs into where the towers would be in a traditional MOBA. So it's kind of like you kill the stuff on the map, try and avoid the other players or kill the other players. When they die, they drop some of their orbs. Then you bank the orbs. Once you destroyed enough, banked enough orbs, that tower will be destroyed, and you can move on to the next one. And then if you can unlock the final tower, final banking station, the points are doubled. So it's really worth it if you can do that. But yeah, it's got a lot of balance issues. Like there's a few really overpowered characters that you just see every game.
And is it Alakazam? Is Alakazam overpowered?
Alakazam's not in there yet, but it's Gengar. What? Gengar is is just ridiculous.
Gengar was always cool. I love Gengar.
Zorora. So anyway, it's a lot of fun. I think they really need to balance it better, and I really hope they do some better things with their pay to win, not pay to win, but with their monetization. Like there is some pay to win elements there. If they just leave the pay to win stuff as it is and don't sort of increase on that, it'll be okay. But they do need to give you a bit more to do every day, I guess. Once you hit that cap, it's like, I don't know. I want to keep playing, like I want to keep progressing, but they just don't let you. It's really stupid.
I don't know anything about MOBAs. I don't think I've ever played a MOBA. And my whole knowledge of Pokemon comes from the 2000 Pokemon movie where Mewtwo talks.
Film.
And that was, film. Like the best film of 2000. I watched it at the cinema. Easy. It was like the coolest thing ever. I bought the soundtrack and
I bought the VHS. We got the Mewtwo card.
Yeah, it was a colored VHS tape too, wasn't it? It was.
I think so.
I don't know, but that was
you're all the nerds.
Yeah, that was the peak 2000 movie for me.
Forgive us for being like 7 and 8 years old.
6 years old.
I loved Pokemon and I was a lot older than that, so it's okay.
Yeah.
There we go.
Conan, what's your experience with MOBAs or Pokemon?
Yeah, I was big into League of Legends. That's the only one I've ever had. I missed Dota 1. I think you really got into one or the other. You're either a League player or a Dota 2 player. And Dota 2 was always sort of the grown-ups version where it was a more refined game. It's where adults and Russians went to play.
It's the masochist version. That's where you go if you want to punish yourself.
Yeah, whereas League seemed like a lot more accessible and a lot more kids were on there. And I mean, it ended up becoming a lot bigger for whatever reason in the esports scene. But I played a lot of League for a couple of years, I think. At least in like senior high when I should have been studying, I was playing League of Legends a fair bit. And then in my year after school before sort of my gap year, I was playing, like, best thing I remember, I got chickenpox when I was 18 and I took a week off. And the only thing I could do that actually helped me to not focus on scratching was playing League because you were so focused. Like I tried playing things on my console, but I couldn't do it because it's like, I can just pause this and scratch the crap out of my face. Whereas with League, it's like, I can't pause it. I'm in the zone for an hour. So I don't have to scratch. And so I played League for 5 days straight. It was awesome.
Yeah, well, I remember when I first met Grana many years ago now, and him showing me how many hours he'd put into Dota 2 at the time. And I tried to calculate how many that was into days, and my calculator broke. And
it goes into months. It definitely goes into months.
That was 8 or 9 years ago. So
I've definitely tapered off on my Dota playing. Like I've probably played 100 hours in the last 2 years, but this game is scratching that same itch. It's a lot simpler. Like it's not as complex as Dota, but there's still some really cool interactions there. So I recommend it if you're into that genre. It's a good stepping off point if you're interested in getting into it. But
I think the 10-minute thing sounds so promising because when you're talking about it, I was like, how can you find an hour to play a game online? Like, because I can't do it anymore with obviously my baby. It's like if I need to get a checker. So 10 minutes is like you can do that. That's doable.
Yeah. And it sounds like Switch is the perfect console as well for that sort of thing.
It's good for me at the moment. Like, with the new baby at home, she can sleep on me while I play, and it's perfect.
Yeah. Well, we'll get into the start of it. So, Conan.
Sorry, Luke, what are you playing?
Yeah, what are you playing?
I'm not really
he's
playing
trying to
anything.
Skip over himself because he's not a gamer.
I'm not a real gamer. No, I don't get much time to play video games these days. The most thing I've been playing recently is with my son. My son plays my PlayStation 5 more than I do. He's been replaying Miles Morales and Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. So just helping him get through that. He still has 2 trophies left to get in Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, which was a fantastic game. Absolutely adored that game. I've been a Ratchet and Clank fan since the original on PS2. It was like my first PS2 game. And Miles Morales is amazing. And I know every line from that game because I've watched him play it through 8 or 9 times. And every time I go into the main menu, there's like five save files at like 2 or 5%. He likes just starting the game from scratch again, not New Game Plus with all the suits. He likes just doing a brand new game and then earning all the suits, earning all the powers again. And then he'll get halfway through that and he'll go and start a new one and just restart from scratch again. Don't know why. He once deleted my save and I was furious, but
loves that tutorial, man.
He does. He loves the whole intro. I think it's just Miles walking through the subway listening to music and Nolan dresses up, and he likes to dress up while he plays it as Spider-Man with a hoodie on, and he loves Miles. So
he's got a future as a cosplayer.
He does. He really does. Conan, what news item or topic do you bring to us this fortnight?
So I don't really keep up with the news. I believe the news is poison to the brain. So I had to rush to find one, but it seemed pretty fitting. Obviously, like I mentioned, it's lockdown here. It looks like it's going to go for another month or so. The rest of the world is still it could be till Christmas. Who knows? The rest of the world is still somewhat decimated, but things are starting to look up. But something that's not looking up, I found out today. So obviously, Japan country with lots of video games, a big part of its culture.
Yeah.
One of the famous arcades there, and I'm going to mispronounce this, the SEGA Ikebukuro Gigo arcade is closing its thank you. Closing its doors after 28 years being open. And I don't know, I've stumbled upon this and I was my heartstrings were kind of pulled a little bit. I was like, that's really sad. I think it's coming off the back of another one recently, the Akihabara arcade, which was another Sega one, closed last year. That one had no explanation. The one closing now, the lease is up and the building's being renovated, so they kind of have to do that for whatever reason. But then I was reading, it's like 22,000 arcades existed in Japan back in the 90s. It's down to about 4,000 now, and sort of ever dwindling. And I don't know, I don't have much experience with arcades. Coming from a country town, they didn't exist, and I just think in Australia they were never a big thing in general. There are a handful of them in Sydney, and they're always kind of fun to walk past and wonder what could be.
Yeah,
but they're like, Sega is a fixture of the gaming scene, and Japan is as well because of Sega and because of Nintendo. And so to see these sort of things that were in a lot of ways kind of like these bastions of like video game history, they've been around like the 28 years. They're like, Sega sort of implemented this brick and mortar, almost temple to gaming. It's like, hey, this is where we came from. This is still a thing. It's a big tourist trap for people. A lot of people go to Japan for sort of nerd culture stuff, seek out these arcades. And to have them closed down, I don't know, it's really it's just made me think about, the effect that COVID has had on the gaming scene and industry as a whole, and just what it's going to look like, and sort of the idea of history getting lost a bit. So I don't know, how do you guys feel about it?
I think I think this is like an interesting topic, especially for you, Conan. Like, I think more than anyone I know, you're like the physical media guy.
100%.
Like there's not a day that goes by without you mentioning Blockbuster or Video Easy or, this holding onto your DVD collection and stuff like that.
I hum the tune to see it at Civic. I hum that to myself every day.
And you sing that you wouldn't pirate a car song all the time.
Oh,
that's my wake up.
He starts narrating, man. When he gets angry, he's just like, that's how he goes off of people. He's just like,
it's my threat.
So there's that, and I feel like obviously you're a fan of Japan and its culture and its gaming thing. You've been to Japan as well.
Had my honeymoon there, yeah.
Exactly. So I'm a bit worried about you. I feel like this is a really sad thing in your life, but no, it's definitely a thing. Like I watched a few documentaries last year. There was a Netflix documentary, High Score, as well, and it went into like a lot of the influence of how modern, companies like Sega and all these were created, and it's so nostalgic, and like watching it is all arcades. Back in the 80s, 90s, like it's all arcades, and it's what kids did That was like the place to hang out. It wasn't Fortnite. It wasn't V-Bucks. It wasn't online video games. It was going to the arcade, you know, like, and there's all these classic scenes in movies like Terminator 2 and they're playing at the arcade. It's just, it's that thing, you know, and obviously, I don't know, Griner's the old one here. Maybe he had experience, but not really, because we're in Australia where it wasn't such a big scene and in a country town. But obviously we're a bit younger, so it sort of missed our generation. We had gaming consoles in our house and everything like that. But it's, man, like, I know it's like Time Zone. When I lived in Sydney, like, I always wanted to go to Time Zone. It was go watch a movie at the cinema, then go to Time Zone afterwards. Like, it was always those two. Oh, we have to go to Time Zone, mum, or you're the worst mum in the world. Like, we have to go there for half an hour and waste more of your money.
It would have been the greatest, like, first date for a 16-year-old.
Yeah.
Looking back, if I was there at 16, taking a girl out, that would have been it, and it would have been a hit.
Let's go watch this movie, and now let me show you my skills.
I'm gonna kick your ass, a deer hunter.
Come watch the smash.
Yep. But yeah, like, it is sad, and I think COVID is the thing that's the accelerator here. Obviously, it's something that arcade is dying, and it is something that's going to happen eventually, other than like a niche market or a sort of a nostalgia store. But COVID's definitely accelerating it and bringing apart that demise. And yeah, it's a bit sad.
This is the thing. So Japan has a huge arcade culture still. Like, they are very much have an element of you go out and play in the arcade, even though they've obviously got like home systems and mobile gaming and everything like that. It was a big part of sort of the gaming cultural identity in Japan, playing in arcades specifically and going to those locations with your friends,
Dance Revolution,
all that good stuff that we love. Like that. And so because of COVID, they're all shut down because obviously they can't do it. And because of that, there's no tourists coming in. So tourists aren't going to these places to experience that either, which is a huge source of revenue.
Yeah.
So even though, like, you are right that arcades are in general sort of slowly dying, I don't think it's like, oh, this is just going to happen in the next 5-10 years. I think in a lot of ways, these things could have been open, like you say, just as a nostalgia trip, as a tourist location. But because of COVID, it's actually been like, no, this isn't sustainable. Yeah, it has to close now, whereas it probably wouldn't have before.
Like, way before tourists have the chance to go back there again. Like, it's going to be done. You know, who knows how long this sort of thing will be going for. Grano, what are your thoughts?
Part of me wants to be just like, get with the times. Like, if there's not a market to support a business, it closed down. That's capitalism. That's the world we live in. But I mean, there is definitely something endearing, like you say, to the 80s arcades where everyone's got their quarters lined up for the next game.
Yeah.
I'll always drop a few dollars into Time Crisis whenever I go past one, but yeah, I don't know. Like, I also haven't spent much time in arcades. I once tried to play a fighting game in an arcade. I'm terrible at fighting games, and someone sat down on the one next to me, versed me, and he just like kicked my ass 3 times in a row. I'm like, well, that was a waste of time. But yeah, I'd love to go visit one in Japan. Like, I think they are really cool. Play some pachinko, see these Yakuza drug fronts, and it'll be fun. But yeah, I don't know. It's the world we live in.
I was thinking a lot about it. I was comparing it in a lot of ways to sport, right? Where a lot of people in Australia, sport is such a huge part of our culture. And there's so many people that I know who are into sport but don't play sport. And it's very much this thing where sport's a huge part of their life and part of their identity, but they don't actually participate in it. All they do is they view it. And there's sort of this weird sense of, I'm part of this broader community without actually being part of the active community. And I guess for me, the arcade thing just made me start thinking about that, where I don't play in arcades. I don't go into the city to play there because I, got crippling social anxiety and I'm not going there with all these people. But there is a real sense where this is like a part of the gaming thing in general. And it's part of the culture that I think, it's a staple in my mind. I was thinking about Moneyball, a Good, Bad, Worst podcast favorite of ours. And how Brad Pitt's got a line there is like, how can you not be romantic about baseball? I'm like, that's what an arcade is to me. It's like, how can you not be romantic about these things? It's where it's where it started. It's where this community was founded, where people came together, like kids came together and was like, there's video games, we can play these. Parents were like, those will rot your brain. But that created this generation of people that then paved the way for us. Like, we became the people who we are because of that in a lot of ways. Because people played arcades and people gave video games a time of the day. Like, this is a thing. And now, like, you know, that's why we're here talking about them.
Have you been into an arcade recently? Like, there's still the classics, like there's still cool games, but there's also lots of like, have you seen the giant Angry Birds machines and stuff like that? Like the giant Fruit Ninja. Like it's, I don't know. I feel like a lot of them have been taken over. They've been taken over by these crappy arcade games. It's like, it isn't that romanticized, you know, thing that you remember. It's changed. It's changed to these things that make money, I guess, but don't have the heart and soul of the ones that we like to remember.
Well, no, but I think that's the thing about romanticism, is that it is the idea of it rather than the physical thing.
Yeah.
And like, as Moneyball taught us, baseball itself is actually a fundamentally flawed game that can be broken with maths. But it's the idea of what it is, how it functions, what it means to us outside of that itself. And I think that's the same thing. Because you're right. I don't go to them. And so it's like, how can I be connected to these things that I don't bother going to? And they are full of like these weird gimmicky games that are cashing in on the latest thing. But I think what they represent more than anything, and they're, like I mentioned before, they're sort of this weird part of history. It's like church buildings, you know, even if you don't believe in church architecture is beautiful. And so if you're just be like, I'm going to level all the churches because they don't have a place anymore, I'd be like, well, that's a beautiful part of history there that you're just sort of leveling. And I feel in a lot of ways arcades are like that. They're the history of video games manifest, and to have them all closed down is probably natural, but it's also, I find it very sad.
Absolutely. There's a great arcade, Blips and Shits, that's with a game called Roy. That's
what a nerd. Gosh.
I have to throw a reference in there. But yeah, no, like, it is sad. Like, it's dying, and we'll be dead one day. But I'm sure there'll always be bowling alleys, and bowling alleys will always have your hunting games and your little racing games. And
I mean, pubs here have that. Like, there's a pub in Newtown I used to go to all the time, and they had like Big Game Hunter, and that was really fun.
Yeah. But
like, I just wanted to ask, did you guys have any thoughts about how COVID has affected the gaming industry otherwise, like outside of the arcade sense, just in general?
It's a weird thing where I feel like it's starting to show, like the effect of COVID starting to show with all these delays. Like there's a lot of game delays because, you know, people working from home don't have access to everything they could have had access to at their office. Like, you know, and it's pretty much like that at every big game studio. They're all working from home. And last year, basically, it was like the games that we got, like Last of Us Goes to Tsushima, it was like the end run of just cleaning up a few things that they were able to get out of the way from home. But now games that are early in development, I think we're going to see they're not coming for a while, and it's going to affect it, definitely.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think, I don't know, I think from like grunt level work, like basic coding and stuff, I think actually working from home can be an advantage. The thing that really suffers when you're working from home is like creativity. Like you don't just see someone in the office and come up with an idea. You have to schedule that time together, and it's not the same. Like it's not the same for throwing around ideas. It's not the same for coming up with creative solutions to things.
No.
So if you're doing, you know, basic QA or something like that, that's probably really good at home. Like I'd probably want to do that at home, but those creative ideas are a lot harder to come up with when you've got to structure your time like that. I think one nice thing is, do you guys see know the game It Takes Two? Came out a few months ago. It was really big on like Twitch and stuff. I haven't played it yet, but it's, you know, cooperative multiplayer, and I think we might see a few more games. I'm hoping we see a few more games that try and connect people like that. In our world where if we feel a lot more separated and we're reliant on technology to bring us together, I'm hoping we see a lot more games that aid in that.
And that's the thing. Like nobody wants to sit on a Zoom call with their friends. You know, like I hate this.
Especially not talking about games.
Talk about games. Like it'd be the worst for game developers. It Takes Two, Conan, is from Joseph Fares, who did A Way Out. And it's the same sort of thing of like it has to be a 2-player. And Brothers,
Okay.
It looks really good. It looks really quirky and fun, and is apparently a really good like co-op game. So I'm keen to play that.
I guess Among Us was kind of the big thing for that time, right? That everybody was playing, and because I guess it's, I feel both sides of it, because that is a really good side of it that people like. But let's try to play these communal games more. But then at the same time, and I guess, you know, LAN parties and stuff were already long dead, but that's even reduced further, where you can't even sort of catch up as much and talk about games, or sort of, you can't go out and really do Pokemon Go to the same extent, things like that. So I think you're right. As long as that does need to be a priority in a lot of ways for game developers, to be like, how can we keep this connection going? Because I think it's an important part of gaming. And if we're all stuck inside it, it's never the same.
Yeah. But, it's sad. Like, they're dead. Speaking of dead things, a lot of game series are dead. Subway. No, so my topic for this week is what dead gaming franchise or dead, gaming property would you guys like to see revived? Whether it was a series or a one-off game that you'd like to see, a reimagining of, or a reboot or whatever. Is what comes to mind first? What would you like to see that you're dying for and that nobody knows the joy of playing? I'll start with you. Griner. Oh no, they'll never reboot that.
That's a shame.
That's a pipe dream. Get over it.
First one that comes to mind is Splinter Cell.
Yeah,
I would love to see Splinter Cell brought back.
Yes,
especially with Metal Gear Solid Dead and MGS5 being such a good showcase for what a sort of not open world, but open map stealth game could be. I think there's room there for that, and it's a shame that no one's coming to fill it. And I think Splinter Cell's a good property to do that. It's not the same. It's not the same tone as Metal Gear Solid, but I think they can. Chaos Theory has a phenomenally fun story, I think, I think with the right people, with Michael Ironside doing the voice again, I think we could have a really fun open world stealth game. Not open world, but I don't know. How do you describe Metal Gear Solid 5?
It's open world. It's definitely
open world, but it's not like a map that you run around and unlock points or anything like that. It's your objectives here. You start here. There's 18 different ways you can go to get there.
It's like an immersive sim sort of thing.
Yeah, have fun in the sandbox and see what happens.
Stealth sandbox, I think, is the best thing for that. What's your experience with Splinter Cell, Griner?
So I really liked Splinter Cell. I really liked the demo of Splinter Cell 1 that came on.
Oh my
Xbox
God,
magazine.
I played that demo so much.
So it was this little contained area, and I just loved playing it over and over again, and I'd shoot out all the lights and all the guards would be super confused, or there's just so many little things you could do in this tiny map. It was a lot of fun. Eventually got the game, really enjoyed it. Splinter Cell, what's the second one called?
Pandora Tomorrow.
I enjoyed it. It wasn't as good as the first one, but it did have this fun co-op mode, as well as Spies vs. Mercs, which I really loved, especially in the early days of Xbox Live. That was a really creative multiplayer game to me, because it was this asymmetrical multiplayer. It was a lot of fun. And then Chaos Theory was amazing. Blacklist I kind of enjoyed. It wasn't terrible. And then
there was a Double Agent in there as well.
Double Agent was all right. Double Agent was one thing of actually. Blacklist was meh.
Mm.
So the one they didn't. That's the one they didn't. They didn't bring Michael Ironside back. Yeah, that's the problem.
Yeah, and he's despite being older, he's more acrobatic and very confusing.
Conan, what's your history with Splinter Cell?
Yeah, big Splinter Cell fan. Griner got me into it. I think I borrowed I borrowed all the games off him back on the original Xbox. I played Pandora Tomorrow first, though, for some reason. And then I played the first one, and then I played Chaos Theory. And they were just, I don't know. I want to say they were the games that really got me into stealth. I can't remember if I played Tenchu before that, though. But I think they were the games that really showed me what stealth could be in a game. You had, lots of other games that dabbled with it and always had a stealth section where it's avoid the enemies for the next 10 minutes and then you're fine. Whereas here's a game that played with things like light and line of sight and put you in these situations. Yeah, really cool gadgets. You had to figure out timing, and then obviously you had the difficulty mode where if you wanted to get the best, you had to go through and not kill anybody, never be detected.
Yeah.
So it's kind of this, can I be the best ghost that I can be? I adored it. I never played the multiplayer. Again, I remember Griner playing it and it always looked fun. But I think, they're such good games. The stories are really good. They had phenomenal performances with Michael Ironside. Just, he's the perfect, dry wit.
Yeah.
And Just such, yeah.
Seeing the man in person, he could never play the live action version, but he voiced him really well.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, because like you're saying, Pandora Tomorrow. I think that was made by Ubisoft Montreal.
Yeah, it was a different studio.
Whereas the first and third, another Ubisoft. I think it was the American branch. And you could tell Pandora Tomorrow was not as good. It was definitely felt a bit more lackluster. But man, and then Double Agent was again a weird thing. There was actually 2 versions of that game.
Yeah, the one on the new consoles and the old consoles. Yeah.
Yeah, and the old console version, from what I gathered, was much better because that was made by the good Ubisoft version branch. Whereas I played the 360 version, which is made by the bad one, and it was kind of had some great ideas, but it kind of fell short. And you could tell they didn't know what to do with the franchise. They're like, we need to keep reinventing it, but they didn't. But they did.
There was Conviction as well. Conviction was kind of...
Yeah, no, Conviction was the one. Yeah, sorry, I never played Blacklist. I played Conviction. I think Conviction still had Ironside, but that was the one where he was super like...
He was on the run, and so it had some cool things, but it wasn't as good.
Yeah, that was one of those first games that I remember. The trailer for that was completely different to the actual game. Like, because the original trailer was very much a social stealth one, and it looked like they were really going to go the Assassin's Creed path.
Yeah,
and then they sort of dumped it all and rebranded. It's like, no, it's the same game, but a lot more lame.
So Conviction has like thrown a spanner in the works for me. Was it Conviction or Double Agent, the one where there's like the prison break and he breaks out of prison?
It's Double Agent.
It was I thought it was Double Agent. So I have a weird history with Splinter Cell where I grew up with Metal Gear Solid, and it was Metal Gear Solid versus Splinter Cell, and Metal Gear Solid 1 was like basically one of the first video games I ever watched. Like every day, my brother would come home from high school. I would sit there and I'd be like, "Can you play Metal Gear Solid again?" And he'd basically finish it every night because it's like a 4-hour game. And I'd just watch him play it. And then the next day, can I watch it again? I was like captivated by that game. So always adored Metal Gear Solid. And so always avoided Splinter Cell. I was just like, no, I can't like that. It's the same as Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter.
Yeah,
like,
I was just about to say.
They're both so different in both those examples, though.
Exactly. And it's
still the war that exists.
There's that war, and there is. And then I remember that demo for Splinter Cell, and like I remember playing that demo over and over again. Never played the full game. I think the first Splinter Cell that I actually played all of was Double Agent, and that was my jam because it hit right at that prison break, like when Prison Break was popular on TV. And I remember playing it like this is a prison break game, and I loved so much like going through behind the toilet and sneaking through the things. I was like, this is the coolest game ever. Really enjoyed that. I think I played Blacklist, the one where like it was like the return and it wasn't Ironside. I played that. I was like, yeah, this is all right. And obviously Splinter Cell is like the famous thing that everyone talks about as the series that everyone wants back. And
it's the Holy Grail.
Ubisoft keep just torturing people. Like, did you see this announcement that they did last week? What was it? What's it called? They announced some basically like a Tom Clancy's game with all these Tom Clancy heroes in this one thing. And there's 2 characters with the Splinter Cell goggles.
3 green lights, yeah.
Like it's just they're assholes. Like it's like, and like they had him appear in Ghost Recon Wildlands. And there's that really cool scene. I never played it, but like it went viral on the internet where like they're talking. He talks about Snake. Like there's like a reference. He's like, there was a guy who wore a bandana. Like, what happened to him? Why didn't you call him? And they're like, oh, he's retired. He's been gone for years. And he's like, there, and he's like, so it's only me. Like he's the last one left. And people are like, yes, do that. Like he's like the last bastion of this bygone era. Like stealth isn't a thing anymore. And it'd be great, but they don't do it. Every year people are expecting a Splinter Cell announcement.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
They don't do it.
And every year people are like, yeah, look, there's rumblings. It's probably going to happen this year.
Yeah.
And there's always like little hints and pieces and breadcrumbs, and it just never comes to fruition. It's so painful.
But yeah, it's, who knows? One day, surely they'll do it. People want that series back, and there's space there now that Metal Gear Solid is not the king anymore, and it's pretty much good and buried now. So why not? Conan, what gaming series would you like to bring back that's not Dead Space? Because
again, I've got to let those hopes go.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to take you back to the era of the N64.
I bet I can predict what this is.
It's not Ocarina of Time.
Is it Turok?
No, but shit, that's a good one.
Okay, sorry. You go. Keep going.
Turok. That's also that's too obvious. That's kind of the one.
Sorry.
No, so this one. Did you guys ever play a game called Body Harvest?
No.
I've heard of it for some reason, but
it's a cool sounding title, Body Harvest. Just think of that for a while. Yeah. So fairly, I don't know how it was big or small by N64 standards, but seemed like a pretty small game. Didn't make huge waves. Not a lot of people know about it. But it was made by a company that would go on to become Rockstar. So before Rockstar was a thing, this was their forerunner. It's this really sort of cool game, basically set in you're a super soldier who's sent back in time to stop an alien invasion of your planet.
Oh, dude, this game looks amazing.
Oh, like your armor is great. It's like big orange shoulder pads and a big orange helmet.
I remember seeing the game for rent all the time at the video store and thinking the cover looked cool.
Yeah. I remember the cartridge art was really awesome. That's basically it. So you're a super soldier. You go back in time to, I think, 4 or 5 different locations in history that were crucial to the alien invasion. Like, basically, it's a very similar story to Mass Effect, where these alien race for some reason just like completely kill all the human beings. Civilization rebuilds, and it repeats. And so it happens like every 20 or 30 years. And so this guy has to go back in time to 5 of those dates and stop the invasion happening to hopefully save the human race. And it was a really cool game. Similar to you, like I used to watch my brother play it a lot because it was very difficult and I was very young. But it was just this really cool, like very sort of scary, like these giant weird spiders would come out, just crush people. And you had to, it was tense because you had to stop them before too many people died. It was back in that era when quests were actually difficult. You couldn't just be like, go to this location and get this item. There's a lot more like actual solving puzzles and figuring out what somebody wanted. And there's really good like world building around it as well, of this sort of, this world is suffering through an alien invasion. I think it's prime video game material.
It sounds great. It sounds like a deep game for a 6-year-old to be playing on the Nintendo 64. Like that's some heavy stuff resting on your shoulders.
That's why I wasn't playing it. I was just watching other people carry that burden. But I think it's one of those titles that, because it was small and a bit wasn't overly successful, it's just been lost to time. But I think it should come back. It would be a lot of fun to have a remake of that or a reboot.
Yeah, no, it looks cool. Looks cool. I wish it was like, it looks a bit dated now.
Oh, it's like blocky. Really? It's blocky as all hell.
It's very blocky. But sounds like I'd never even heard of it. I was a bit cautious about searching Body Harvest then on Google, but I made sure I put N64 at the end and it wasn't too bad.
Just don't search it on Bing, you'll be right.
Yep. Bing, no. So my one, I hadn't actually prepared one, pretty bad, but the one because I was thinking of Splinter Cell as well, but my one would have to be, and I know it's not as long dead as these other ones, but it's Metal Gear Solid.
I was just about to joke and say that.
Because
I was going to joke and say The Last of Us.
Honestly, yeah, that needs a remake. Like Metal Gear Solid was my favorite gaming series. Like, man, Metal Gear Solid 3's I used to consider my favorite game of all time before Naughty Dog and like Last of Us and everything like that. I love that series. 4 was like this big emotional moment in my life. I took the week off school when 4 came out, and my mum approved it. She was like, "Oh, Metal Gear Solid 4 is coming out next week. You absolutely have the week off. Here's some
what a legend!"
Like 100%. I was like, "Mum, I need the DualShock controller because I got the 6-axis one that doesn't vibrate, and I need it because it was released the same day as Metal Gear Solid 4." And she's like, "Of course." She like knew, because it was this thing that I had with my older brother. It was like this thing that Metal Gear Solid was like our bond, like over the years, and 4 was like the culmination of that. Snake was an old man now. I was 18, like in year 12. He's old and about to die. I felt like I was old and about to die at that age. Like,
you had a robotic arm that had the soul of someone else in it that had taken over your mind. Lots of stuff like that.
Exactly. I related to this game. There was a weird vampire that liked to lick his blades, and some weird stuff in Metal Gear Solid 4 when I look back on it, because I haven't played it in 12 years or so. But like Metal Gear Solid 4, I feel like is the last Metal Gear Solid game I got. Metal Gear Solid 5 was amazing, and I I put 100 hours into that into a week. But it wasn't Metal Gear Solid to me. Like, that was a great game to play, but that story, it wasn't a Metal Gear Solid story. It was an open world game with bits of story cutscenes thrown in. I felt like it didn't have that narrative thing. They replaced David Hayter with Kiefer Sutherland, who had like, I think 2 or 3 lines of dialogue in like the whole game. It didn't feel like Metal Gear Solid to me. And as much as I loved playing that game, I feel like I haven't played a Metal Gear Solid game since 2008 with Metal Gear Solid 4. There's always these rumors that Blue Point are going to remake Metal Gear Solid 1 with like the original cast, and I'm super hyped for that. But if Splinter Cell's not going to come back, and if Ubisoft are going to be dicks about it and keep just teasing it, I would love to see Metal Gear Solid come back. And I don't know, it could actually be good without that sort of Kojima zaniness. I know that's what makes it.
What is wrong with you?
No, not all of, like, there's some stuff in there where I'm just like, it's a bit weird and doesn't hold up. Like, it's a bit cringy.
Yeah, but for me, the only reason I want Metal Gear Solid back is because I want Kojima doing it. No, there's no other way.
And if he's involved, it'd be great. But Kojima with shackles, I think, is like a perfect combination.
Kojima.
If he's just out on his own, we get Death Stranding, and
I know.
We get Norman Reedus tipping Monster Energy drinks onto the screen. Like, it's a too Kojima, you need Konami Kojima basically with Metal Gear Solid. Metal Gear Solid 3, I think, is an amazing game. And I don't know. You guys probably never played the Metal Gear Solid games before 5.
I haven't played it. I haven't played any of them.
I have played bits and pieces of the others. I actually watched a series on Giant Bomb where they play through all of them because it was very entertaining. And like, true. Every time I tried to play them, I just found them super clunky to control.
Yeah.
Like, that's the thing I love about Chaos Theory. I like about Splinter Cell. It's these proper modern third-person controls.
Yeah.
And then you go back to Metal Gear Solid, and it's like, well, if you hold down the button halfway, he'll lock onto, like, he'll aim down the sights, and then you can release it slowly. Like, it was just clunky as all get out. But I do really respect.
They had the bird's eye view as well, bird's eye camera. It was like a bit weird, but
I do really respect what Kojima did, like the stories he told. Like, I'll never forget watching these guys play 3, and there's that scene where you climb up the ladder and there's just a song playing and you just climb for
Snake Eater
minutes. It's so good.
It's so good. I love it. I'll just, every now and again on a Friday night, I'll sit there with a popper and just watch someone climb that ladder.
Yeah.
It's great. And like, I have such a nostalgia thing for Metal Gear Solid 3. Like, I played that in high school. I'd invite friends over and we'd play that game. I think everything they did in that, I feel like over the last 10 years, boss battles have really died, except for stuff like Souls games where they sort of brought it back. But boss battles aren't a thing in like story-driven games. And Metal Gear Solid always had the best boss battles. Like, obviously, Psycho Mantis in Metal Gear Solid 1 blew my mind as a kid, and like, it still gives me nightmares. But like, Metal Gear Solid 3, I think, has my favorite boss battle, like the End, who's this old guy who has photosynthesis. He lives in, like, he's just this 150-year-old man, lives in the forest, lays there, and it's a sniper battle.
He's a sniper.
Like, it's just a sniper battle, you and him, and you track his footprints. When it rains, you can see his footprints better. Like, oh, if I look at here, I can see the reflection of his scope bouncing when I do this. Use the directional microphone, I can hear him breathing in that direction. Oh, there's his parrot. I'll shoot his parrot and he'll start raging. And then I can, okay, he's over there. Okay, cool. I can try and take a shot. And the coolest way to defeat him by saving the game, heading out, changing your clock a week forward, going back into the game and watching a cutscene of him dying of old age.
Yeah, it's really good.
And then you just like walk to the next level. It's amazing. And the fact that you can actually kill him earlier on in the game as well. There's a cutscene where he's getting wheeled away in a wheelchair, like, oh, you need to go to the forest now. And as soon as that cutscene ends, if you pull out the sniper, you can still see him being wheeled. And if you boom, 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 he dies there. And when you get to that area, Snake just like looks around, and then you go to the next area, and it's like, well, there goes that cool boss battle. But yeah, I love that game, and like, I obviously would want Kojima involved because he's essential to that series.
Yep.
And I think that's what Metal Gear Solid 5 suffered for, is Konami's involvement too much to try and remove Kojima from that. But yeah, Anyway, Metal Gear Solid.
I think Metal Gear Solid 5 has its moments story-wise, and I think
it does.
I think it just got cut short, is what I think happened. Like, it felt like it was building up to something bigger in the second act, and then it ends.
Yeah. Like, I feel like in the first few hours of that game, you get the most story, though. Like,
yeah, you do.
The first 3 hours of that, I'm like 100%. This is a Metal Gear Solid game. Wasn't what was I worried about? And then it goes 20 hours, and I haven't seen anything again. Like, I don't know what's going on. I'm just running around. But obviously, fantastic game. If we could get that with a crazy Metal Gear Solid story, it'd be perfect. So we'll move on to our third and final topic. Groner, what have you brought for us in positive news week this week?
So this is a really heavy one. It's the Activision Blizzard lawsuit that happened like a couple of hours before our last podcast. If you don't want to hear us talk about things like suicide and assault, please skip ahead. This is the last thing we're going to talk about on this podcast. Obviously, they're very unpleasant topics, but I do think it's an important thing to get out there and talk about, because I do think it's a bit of a problem within the industry in general, not just within Activision and Blizzard. So the story, for those who don't know, on the 20th of July, the California Department of Fair Employment and Housing filed a lawsuit against Activision Blizzard, alleging discrimination and sexual harassment against women in the workplace. So the main things they were talking about is a sort of a frat boy culture. So men were put up for promotions and treated differently to women. There's lots of allegations of women being harassed. And probably the most disturbing thing is that there's a story of a Blizzard employee committing suicide while on a work trip due to a sexual relationship she had with her supervisor. So it's a pretty horrifying read, really, this lawsuit.
And that's the thing, like the whole thing with the suicide is something like I never heard of. Like, I don't know if it was a news item back in when it happened, but it seems to be like this thing that's just wasn't, you'd think that's a big news. I know, I think in today's culture, in today's society, that would be all over like Twitter, and that would be something that was talked about and addressed, but it's something that seems like it was sort of
swept under the rug.
Yeah, if that had happened like post this or anything, like, it'd be huge, but you're right, like it just kind of was silenced and put away.
And I guess one thing Blizzard came out and said is they were kind of like, how dare you bring this up against us? Like, it wasn't related to anything at work. But I mean, when you add that to all the allegations that have come out and the corroborating reports that have come out since of past employees, it's a pretty damning story, I think.
And like, that's the thing, they've done this lawsuit after a 2-year investigation. Like, they were looking and building up evidence for 2 years now, and they were like, okay, we got him, basically. Like, we can put this lawsuit forward. We've got enough evidence. We've got enough people coming to us and telling us these stories. And like you were saying, people being put up for promotions where performance and stuff would suggest that they deserved it. The person who didn't get the promotion deserved it, but they were female, so their male counterpart got it, not based on anything like performance or tenure or anything like that. Not great. And like, obviously, when this came about, the video clip resurfaced from BlizzCon, like in 2010, I believe it was, which is gross to watch.
So what was that one again? It was so a girl asked, when are you going to change your armor sets so that they're not so degrading towards women? And they basically laughed her off, essentially.
Basically, she says, like, when are you just going to include more options? Like, not even like change them or complaining. She's obviously a big World of Warcraft fan. And she's like, when are you going to include more options for people where it doesn't look like they're dressed out of a catalog? And like, the most disturbing thing about that is she says that you can hear a bunch of like high pitched like cheering in the crowd. Then it's drowned out by a very loud, like all these men booing and stuff like that. And you can tell she feels uncomfortable. And then the 6 dudes on stage, which are like the 6, big heads at Blizzard and like Activision, just laughing at her and like saying stuff like, can you picture Sylvana any other way, honestly? Or like Sylvanas, sorry, I'm not a World of Warcraft guy, but
it's really not the point of the story, I'm sorry.
And like, he's like, what catalog would you like her out of? And they just make a bunch of jokes like, oh well, yeah, okay, we'll try and choose different catalogs next time, and just chuckle, and she walks away really awkwardly. And it's so scumbaggy. And again, something that if that came out on an E3 now, holy crap, would there be a shitstorm about it? But back in 2010, it was sort of no one paid attention. Everyone laughed it off. Like none of these journalists were reporting on it or anything like that. And it's not a good look for them, like to come out.
No, their response has been like extremely poor, to say the least. So initially they sort of tried to call out the case and say, you should have come to us to resolve these issues before litigating us.
Yeah.
And they're saying, these complaints are inaccurate, but lots of people have jumped on them for this response, and have come in with corroborating stories.
Yeah.
Lots of previous employees like Chris Metzen, who was a previous president of Blizzard, have come out and issued apologies.
But not good apologies, was it?
No, well, I mean, he's not part of the company, so his apology is neither here nor there. But then, like their chief compliance officer, who was previously someone who defended torture for the Bush administration.
Good guy.
Which is just a weird, it's a girl, it's a woman. It's just a weird twist to this story, but she basically came out.
I need to reevaluate my personal biases.
She's come out more than once and basically tried to call the lawsuit untrue and distorted.
Yeah.
And then there's reports of internal Activision meetings, basically trying to say, well, we shouldn't, our compliance officer shouldn't have said that. We're trying to work towards a resolution. And then her going back on that again. It keeps going back and forth.
Yep.
So all this has resulted in Blizzard staff signing open letters condemning these responses, condemning what the condemning people who have been doing these wrong things. And they also they staged a walkout, a stop work meeting last week.
So
and they basically had 4 demands: an end to mandatory arbitration for employee contracts. So that's where things get settled out of court, basically, after, like when an employee leaves or has a complaint, which to me seems to just really benefit the company rather than anyone else. Like keeps
100%.
Everything private, feels like it lets them hide things.
It's the same reason they are angry that they didn't get like approached about this investigation first, because they were like, we couldn't sweep this under the rug. Now everybody knows. God damn it. Keep going. Sorry.
No, you're right. And they're just asking for more diverse hiring practices, publication of like promotion rates and salary ranges, and then like a third party to come in and audit Activision Blizzard. So they don't seem like I think the first one's the big thing, end of mandatory arbitration. I doubt they'll get that because it's a big thing in the US and in the game industry. But the other ones, I think they will get. But I think they're all reasonable things to ask for.
I mean, the mandatory arbitration is tricky because in the US legal system as well, it's such it's a rich man's game. And so you need to have money to make any progress. And so unless you get lucky with a lawyer who's willing to, sort of work pro bono, and you're going to win and you're going to make a lot of money from winning, that is a middle ground. It's kind of like a necessary evil, because sometimes it's like, look, something happens, it's really shitty and people should face severe punishments. But because the legal system is pretty flawed, they would probably lose. Like if this court case happened, the defendant would the complainant would lose, and the company would just be like, great, we've only won even more. And so this is kind of one of those weird, it's not a win, but it's the next best thing. So although it is, like, you're right, it's good that this wouldn't be sort of the first course of action. It's like, no, there's actually going to be proper recompense and stuff happening.
Yeah.
It needs to be followed up really cautiously, because otherwise it just goes down the same path of, look, dozens of lawsuits get leveled, but they just get, no one can carry them.
They get nowhere. I guess the advantage, though, is that they become public, which does try to help keep these companies to account.
No, you're right. Like, reputation is the most valuable thing for any sort of public company. And so to have that,
I mean, like, no matter what happens here, low, like, their reputation is pretty damaged. And
for sure.
For people looking to get into game development, if you're a woman, you're not going to be looking at Activision, like Blizzard, as your top priority moving forward. No. And it's going to have an impact for a fair while, I imagine. It wasn't a good look. I feel like a lot of the people that were either former heads or current heads of Blizzard, like, were coming out and apologizing or saying stuff like, they weren't really aware of the extent of it or anything like that when they were some of the people on the stage laughing at that woman. There've been the text messages. So, Conan, I'm not sure if you know that this. Grant, you've done a bit of research, so you probably know the Cosby Suite.
Yeah.
So,
bizarre.
like, this was like a weird thing where basically they all posed for a photo, and there was some like incriminating text messages about what they were calling the Cosby Suite, and like trying to bring girls back to this room that like Bill Cosby stayed at. And yeah, it's not good. It's not a good look, and the text messages aren't great. But
I mean, just going to say quickly, to be fair to that, like the reason I didn't sort of include it is it's kind of like it happened before Cosby stuff came out, so they didn't necessarily know at the time.
Oh, really?
Yeah, okay. It was like very early on where there might have been some allegations. And there hasn't been a lot of evidence that anything actually took place. It might have just been some poor taste jokes said there, but it still looks like, regardless of what actually happened,
a good look.
It's not a good look. That's right.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, like, did this come up after the allegations came out, or is it just because Bill Cosby stayed there?
People knew, like, or people were aware that there was stuff about this at the time, but they try to say that it was because of his sweater, and like it was like that he based on his ugly sweaters he wore or something, because like the carpet there was bad. I don't know. It didn't sound very good, especially with all this other stuff. It's not a good look at all for these guys. But
and from what I was reading, like, it was one of those, in any sort of like creative industry, there's always these networking such a big part, and this seemed to be one of those real like networking things, and it speaks to the toxicity of it, because it's this, like, it sounds like a frat party, like it sounds like a room where a bunch of like the dudes who are already sort of in the know and who are already the ones who are benefiting from this company go to this sort of creepy place, make weirdly jokes that maybe aren't strictly like horrible, but are still a bit inappropriate. And they network, and it's like, they're just going to win from this. It's like no woman's going to. And again, like, say those text messages they have where they're talking about getting girls to this thing, that's disgusting.
Yeah.
And there was there's the cube crawls that people mention, like in the lawsuit, that they were making them crawl around the office or something like that. I don't know too much about it. Yeah, it's pretty poor all around.
I mean, it all just sounds like frat party stuff, right? Like, let's get these people incredibly drunk and then harass women, and
which obviously. I don't know. There's a part of it's just like it seems weird to me, or maybe it's speaking to something deeper, that like all these people that are like developers of World of Warcraft, who've like is like the nerd thing and maybe picked on in college. They're like, now we're the frat boys. It's like that clip of Todd Howard, like, who's laughing now when I used to be the head of the chess club, but who's laughing now? It's like, I don't know. They're on a bit of a power trip, I feel like, with the whole thing, and that finally that they're in power and they're the kingdoms of this mountain or whatever. But it's weird.
Yeah, it's very creepy.
It can feel a lot like that, like in any of these male dominated, especially, but like geek dominated too. Like, I don't know. I've seen it in the past in Magic tournaments. Like, there's a fairly high ranking non-binary player who has had a lot of harassment over the years, stuff like this. And it's just, I don't know. It does seem to be that these people who maybe didn't fit in high school have found their place, but unfortunately, it seems to breed toxicity and it drowns out the good things that are happening there too.
And you see them, like, I follow like a bunch of Magic streamers, and you see anytime like there's a female one, there's always this weird culture of like people who are just constantly harassing them because they're like, you're only popular because you're a girl, you're only doing this for likes, for attention. And it's like these people are just playing this game they love the same way that every other guy is doing it. And there's just this, but there's sort of this barrier. It's like these nerds can't see past it. Like, no, you're a woman first. And
it's like, the whole gatekeeping thing. Like, there's this gatekeeping around nerd culture. Like, Marvel movies have it too, and I think that's slowly disappearing as it's becoming more of like a mainstream thing that everyone's growing up and loving. But video games still have this massive thing with gatekeeping where, I don't know if, like, like I was saying earlier, all these people who are gaming was sort of maybe their escape. Like, I know it was for me, like, to escape to, and that was my thing, and if the popular kids start playing my games, if like someone from my high school that was popular started talking about Metal Gear Solid, I'd be like, no, that's my thing, but we all grow up and you've got to get over that. And like, it's like the thing that you can't stop other people from enjoying it. And it can be everybody's thing.
As a hipster, I'm fully for that. Every time somebody likes something that I like, I'm like, no, you can't do that. It's mine. And I think, that's the big thing. Like, you're right. you're ostracized or you like something that's not quite popular and you finally get into it, it's like, oh, here are my people. This is our sacred property.
Yeah.
And it's like the whole purpose of sort of that is what you want to see from that is to break those barriers down and actually be like, no, video games aren't just obscure, weird things that rot your brain. Video games are good. And so you want to see everyone come into it. And unfortunately, people get weird about it. It's like, I don't want to see change happen. I don't want to see, I don't want to see this new world that represents, but that has to happen. And it's like, you see it in absolutely everything. Like, I was listening to this podcast about this political thing in the South and talking about like trying to diversify the Democratic Party. And that same thing where like there's this real sense of, no, we've built this and we earned this because we were there when it was tough. And so this is how we approach things. And it's like they've done the good work though. They've actually made games are more accessible now.
Yeah.
It's really hard to then pull that back and be like, okay, now I can step aside and let new blood come into this. But that's what has to happen. And the game industry does it the worst, I think, because it is such a heavily male-dominated and ostracized field.
It has been. Like, it feels like it's not so much anymore. Like, games
are
definitely mainstream now, and they're definitely less male-dominated than they were. It's just unfortunate that these, I don't know, bastions of dickheads still exist.
That's great. That's quote that. That's a great
bastion of dickheads.
That's the thing. There was this specific tweet I saw on Twitter when this whole thing, like, it was in the replies to that video from Blizzard about the woman getting harassed when she asked that question. And there was someone that was like, yes, like, I've always been a fan of World of Warcraft and like these outfits are this and that, which obviously is a thing in gaming where it was a thing for a very long time, like ridiculous outfits in this sort of fantasy genre. And there was a guy there who replied to her and he was like, well, don't come into like a man's thing then and try and make it like a woman thing. He's like, well, I don't go into like women's clothing store to try and make you wear like men's clothes or do this. I'm like, oh, it's like, it seems parody. Like, it seems like he's, his Twitter name would be like Neckbeard 101, but it's like, it's not parody. He really believes that it's like a men only thing to play video games. And obviously like it's definitely improved over the years, and hopefully in a few more years it's wiped out completely, but it's unfortunately a pretty toxic thing. And obviously this is stuff that's ingrained in that. And I think moving forward, Activision Blizzard has this thing because the people that like started that and the people that are at the root of that company that hired people who then hired other people, the toxicity started there. Like, they were part of this culture. And it's going to take a while to either change that culture there or improve at least the PR like outlook on that company. But it's not a good look and a pretty bad taint on them. And I don't know, people seem to now be, there was I think it was Games Radar posted like a random tweet the other day from an article they did 8 months ago. There was like, here's all the cool Overwatch 2 heroes and weapons and guns. And people just like, why are you promoting this? Like, why'd you retweet this? Like, it's, no one wants to support them right now. It's like not good.
That was going to be my next question, because I used to be a very big fan of Blizzard games. Like, I loved Warcraft 3, I loved StarCraft 2. Like, I even played Heroes of the Storm, which hardly anybody played. Well, how do you guys feel about Blizzard games going forward? I mean, I know Activision and Blizzard are together, but this lawsuit definitely screams, Blizzard as being the ones perpetrating this. How do you feel about playing their games going forward?
Me personally, I'm not a Blizzard guy.
Yeah, fair enough.
But like, honestly, the closest Blizzard thing I have is Overwatch, and I maybe put a ridiculous 12 hours into Overwatch, which for me is probably my second most played online game. And I enjoyed that. My roommate, he really loved that game and played it every day. And it was something I couldn't get into. It was fun and everything like that. And it's weird because like I feel like Overwatch was looked at as this thing that was inclusive. Like, it's, they had heroes that were bi or like gay or anything like that, and really promoted that with like their short movies that they did on characters. So it's kind of a weird thing now for people to be like, no, screw Overwatch 2. Like, this company is like horrible.
Yeah.
Conan, what's your experience with Blizzard and what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I was a bit like, StarCraft was a very pivotal game to my teenage gaming. Played a lot of StarCraft 1, played a bunch of StarCraft 2 when it came out. I sort of missed the Warcraft, but StarCraft was huge to me. I adore those games. But Luke, I think your point is, like, I am very much a believer in separating art from the artist, and this is a whole other conversation to really delve into. And there's no answer. Like, everyone has to find their own standing on this. But yeah, for me, I'm like, look, like, and that Overwatch comparison is really apt because I think there would be a lot of people who found Overwatch a game they got a lot out of. A lot of sort of LGBT people, a lot of people who feel underrepresented look at that and go, this is good. There's finally a game that is representing me.
Yep.
And so I think to then turn around and say, well, Blizzard made it and they had a bad culture, so screw this, it's all bad, actually belittles their experience and also just belittles the general goodness that was also going on. Like, I have no doubt that in that company there was some great creative, like, inspiration. There were some moments of, probably great work culture as well. In no way trying to subtract saying this is not a problem, because it is a huge problem. But I just don't think it's wise to say, Blizzard as a company, screw them, I hate them because they did something bad, because that flies in the face of all the good that they have done. And they have done good in the past. So, like, I don't go out and buy Blizzard properties, and I never played Overwatch. But I'm not going to not play StarCraft now because of this. Or I'm not going to look at something and go, they were involved because, this is how change happens. This problem comes out. And unless they literally just say, hey, we're not changing, we're going to keep having Cosby parties.
Yeah.
Then it's like, and then they're like, by the way, buy my StarCraft merch that we came up with in the Cosby suite.
Yep.
Like, if they're changing, if they're trying to grow, like, that's
the thing as well. Like, people get change from, like, speak with your wallet. So if like, a lot of people, I would imagine, don't want to support this company now because of what they've done. And, like, I don't know, but like what you just sort of touched on, if something comes out again that, like, is a recent thing, like, that happens after this story breaks, if something happens in a year or two down the line, it's not going to be good at all. Like, it's like,
no.
They're on thin ice here basically now from here on out, I think.
But I mean, like, lots of game companies have had stuff like this happen as well, where there's been insights into toxic work culture, where there's been issues that have been buried.
Yeah.
And, like, they do either just, they get forgotten about, or they're like, yeah, look, we're trying to change, and they address the issues and they move on. So I don't expect this to be like, for the next 10 years, Blizzard are like, we are only doing, we're only furthering the cause to try to make amends.
Yep.
But I think there'll be change for sure.
Yeah. Let's hope so. And I mean, like, obviously, yeah, you say they're still good there. Like, there was the 4,000 people in their workforce, like, had to stop work meeting over this. Like, we're obviously very unhappy with it, and they worked on his games. And yeah, I mean, I guess when I was thinking about this question, I was thinking, I'm kind of glad there's nothing appealing in Blizzard for me anymore. Like, there's nothing coming out soon that I'm looking forward to. Overwatch 2 doesn't interest me. I don't even know of it. Like, Diablo 4, not really for me. So, like, it's an easy to say, I won't play their games, but I mean,
you weren't doing that anyway.
Blizzard has slipped as a quality developer anyway.
Yeah, I would agree with that completely.
Any other final thoughts on this topic or moving forward?
I mean, speaking of sex offences in games, did you guys hear of the Brazilian Fortniter who was arrested?
No.
So this dude, Raulzito, is his gamer tag. He was a Fortnite streamer. He was arrested in Brazil a few days ago for child sex offences, which is really horrifying. So he just seems like, a big streamer, or a streamer nonetheless, and he used his influence to coerce people who are underage into
free V-Bucks.
Into doing terrible things. So, again, this seems like something that hasn't really made the rounds a lot. I just found someone shared it on some page, and I think Business Insider and a couple of other sources were reporting on it. But besides that, it's just kind of been like, that happened. But,
well, that's a bright note to end it on.
The scumbags everywhere.
Yeah. Exactly. It's not just Activision Blizzard.
Also, I'll just do a shout out. Richard Hogue, he has a YouTube channel, Hogue Law. He's a lawyer who's a big gamer and does a lot of videos going to the legal side of things that I find fascinating. He did a big video explaining what this lawsuit actually is, what's going on behind it. That's kind of a interesting peek into the lawyer side of things. So yeah, check it out. Thanks for watching. As always, like and subscribe. You can find the audio of this podcast on all major podcast providers, and you can find us on social media at Bonus XP Podcast. If you like this, you might like hearing us debate what is the worst of a film trilogy series on our other podcast,